My name is Eldon, and up until last week, I thought I had a solid marriage. Not perfect, because what marriage is. But I believed we had a bond built on trust, respect, and years of shared experiences. I never imagined that a single conversation would shatter all of that in an instant. It happened on a Friday evening. I had just finished a long day at work and was looking forward to unwinding at home. The moment I stepped inside, I could tell something was off. My wife, Lenora, was sitting on the couch, her legs crossed, sipping a glass of wine with an unusual expression on her face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was something calculated. "Hey," I greeted her, loosening my tie. "What's up?" She patted the seat next to her, motioning for me to sit down. I did, though the tension in the air made me uneasy. She took a deep breath and then dropped the bombshell. "I want to spend the weekend with another man." At first, I laughed. A dry, nervous chuckle, because surely this had to be some kind of joke. But she didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She just stared at me with those cold, unreadable eyes. "What?" My voice cracked slightly. "I've been thinking about this for a while," she continued, swirling her wine as if we were discussing dinner plans. "I need to experience something new. Something exciting." I felt my stomach turn. "Are you serious right now?" She sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Look, Eldon, I love you, but I don't want to go through life wondering what I might have missed. I don't want regrets. It's just one weekend. No strings attached. Then we can move on like nothing happened." I stared at her, my mind racing. My wife, my partner of 7 years, was asking for a hall pass. And she expected me to just sit at home while she ran off to experience something new? The worst part? She didn't look guilty. She didn't look conflicted. She looked free, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders just by saying it out loud. I wanted to yell, to demand an explanation, to remind her of the vows we took, of the life we built together. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sat there, numb, my heart pounding in my chest. "I know this is a lot to take in," she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. A flicker of irritation crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with a sigh. "Eldon, this doesn't have to change anything between us." I let out a bitter laugh. "You really think that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she finished her wine, set down the glass, and stood up. "I already made plans," she said casually. "I'll be leaving tomorrow morning." That was it. No apology. No hesitation. Just a statement of fact. I watched as she walked upstairs, leaving me alone in the deafening silence of our living room. I had never felt so small, so invisible. But as the hours passed, as the shock gave way to something colder, sharper, I realized something. I was done being the invisible, dependable husband she took for granted. She wanted a weekend to explore new experiences? Fine. By the time she came back, she wouldn't recognize the life she had so carelessly thrown away. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, Lenora's words echoed in my head like a slow, torturous drip of poison. "I need to experience something new." She said it so effortlessly, as if our years together were nothing more than an old pair of shoes she was eager to toss aside. The worst part wasn't just that she wanted another man. It was that she expected me to accept it, to sit at home, waiting for her like some obedient, lovesick fool. By the time the sun rose, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was furious. Lenora packed her bags that morning, acting as if she were leaving for a business trip rather than a betrayal. She didn't even look nervous. She kissed my cheek before walking out the door like it was just another weekend away. "You'll see," she said lightly. "This will be good for both of us." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just watched as she rolled her suitcase down the driveway, climbed into an Uber, and disappeared. The moment she was gone, I sat in the quiet of our house, taking in the absurdity of it all. The love of my life had just left me to go explore someone else, and I was supposed to wait for her return? No, absolutely not. That was the moment I made my decision. Lenora had made her choice, and now I was making mine. I wasn't going to be the husband sitting at home, drowning in self-pity. I wasn't going to be the man left behind, forgotten and discarded like yesterday's news. By the time she came back, everything would be different. The first move. I walked into our bedroom, the same one we had shared for years, and stared at the bed. I imagined her coming back after her little adventure, expecting to slip back into our routine like nothing had happened. She had no idea what was coming. I grabbed my phone and made a few calls, first to a moving company, then to a locksmith. By noon, they were at my door. Everything in the master bedroom, except for the bed. I instructed the movers. Pack it up. I don't care where it goes. Just get it out of here. They got to work immediately, hauling out every piece of furniture, every personal belonging of hers. By the time they were done, the room was practically unrecognizable, empty, hollow, just like how I felt when she dropped her bombshell on me. Then came the locksmith. New locks on every door, I told him. Front, back, garage. Change the codes too. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and got to work. By the time the sun was setting, I stood in the middle of an entirely different home. The house that once held memories of our marriage now felt like a blank slate. And I wasn't stopping there. A new chapter. I poured myself a drink, sat back on the now half-empty couch, and scrolled through my phone. I had never been the type to download dating apps. I always believed in real connections, in love that was built over time. But that version of me? He was gone. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for something new. And within minutes, I found it. Her name was Odette. Unusual name, unusual beauty. Dark hair, piercing green eyes, a confidence in her smile that radiated through the screen. We exchanged a few messages, and within the hour, she was on her way over. As I heard the knock on the door, I took one last glance around the house. Lenora had walked out thinking she had control over this situation, that I would be here, waiting, pining, desperate for her return. She had no idea that by the time she came back, she would be the one standing in the ruins of what used to be her life. With a smirk, I opened the door. "Hi," Odette said, flashing a wicked smile. I stepped aside, letting her in. Let the games begin. The moment Odette stepped inside, I knew I had made the right decision. She didn't hesitate, didn't fumble for small talk. She walked in with an effortless grace, her sharp green eyes scanning the room as if she already owned the space. "Nice place," she said, slipping off her jacket and tossing it over the arm of the couch. I poured us both a drink, my hands steady, my mind oddly clear. A mere 24 hours ago, my wife had sat in that very same spot and told me she needed to feel another man's touch. Now, here I was, offering another woman a drink in our home, with her name already fading into irrelevance. "Tell me something," Odette said, tilting her head, her lips curling into a smirk. "A man like you, why is he suddenly single?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Who said I'm single?" She raised a brow. "Oh." I leaned back, taking a slow sip. My wife left for the weekend to try something new. I figured I'd do the same. For a split second, I expected her to judge me, to call me petty or bitter. But instead, she let out a low chuckle and leaned in closer. "I like that," she said, her voice playful but with a dangerous edge. "A man who knows how to take control." Control. That was the word. For the first time since Lenora had dropped her bombshell, I actually felt like I was in control. Not just reacting, not just drowning in her choices, but making my own. And I wasn't done yet. Flipping the script. By Sunday evening, the house no longer felt like a place of betrayal. It felt like a declaration of independence. The movers had taken the last of Lenora's things. I had repainted the bedroom, changed the sheets, rearranged the furniture. Every trace of her, her perfume, her books, her forgotten hair ties on the nightstand, was gone. Odette had stayed the entire weekend. Not because I needed her to, not because I was lonely, but because I wanted her to. Because I deserved to have someone by my side who actually wanted me, not just the stability I provided. And then, at exactly 6:07 p.m. on Sunday evening, my phone buzzed. "Lenora." I let it ring. She called again, and again. I finally answered, letting the silence stretch for just a second too long before I spoke. "Back already?" I said, my voice calm, unaffected. She hesitated. I just got home. The front door, Eldon, why isn't my key working? I smiled, swirling the whiskey in my glass. That's strange. Maybe because it's not your home anymore. The silence on the other end was deafening. Eldon, she finally said, her voice cracking. What do you mean? I took a slow breath, enjoying the moment. I mean, you made your choice. Now I've made mine. You wanted something new? Well, so did I. She let out a shaky laugh, the kind that wasn't really a laugh at all. You're being ridiculous. I told you, this was just a weekend. It didn't mean anything. And yet, you expected me to sit around and wait for you like some obedient little husband. I leaned back, glancing at Odette, who was watching me with an amused expression. Sorry, Lenora. I had other plans. The next sound I heard was a frantic rattling at the door. Open the damn door, Eldon. I took my time, finishing my drink before walking over. When I finally pulled it open, I was greeted by the sight of my wife, ex-wife, standing there, suitcase in hand, her face pale with shock. Her eyes darted past me, locking onto Odette, who was casually leaning against the staircase in her silk robe, the one Lenora had probably assumed would still be hers. Who the hell is she? I smirked. Something new. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked around, realizing for the first time that the house wasn't the same. The framed wedding photos were gone. The decor had changed. Even the scent in the air was different. This wasn't her home anymore. It never would be again. Lenora stood frozen in the doorway, suitcase still clutched in her hand, her breath coming in uneven gasps. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to process what had happened while she was away. The scent of her familiar perfume, once something that comforted me, now felt like an unwanted ghost in my home. A home that no longer belonged to her. Her eyes darted from me to Odette, standing confidently on the staircase, then back to the empty spaces where her belongings used to be. This isn't funny, Eldon, she finally stammered. Where's my stuff? I crossed my arms, leaning lazily against the doorframe. Gone. Her face drained of color. Gone? What do you mean gone? I mean, I had it moved. New bedroom, new locks, new life. You wanted your weekend away, right? I smirked. Well, I made the most of mine too. For the first time since she walked out that door, I saw something break in her. She let out a shaky breath. You're not serious. This isn't how this was supposed to go. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, and how exactly was it supposed to go, Lenora? You thought you'd come back home, and I'd just be here waiting for you. She swallowed hard. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, Eldon. I just needed to try something new. I finished for her. She flinched. Odette let out a quiet chuckle from the stairs. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. Lenora's eyes flickered toward her, then back to me. You replaced me, she whispered. I let her words hang in the air. Wasn't that the whole point? I finally said, tilting my head. You wanted to explore your options. So I did too. Her hands clenched into fists. You don't just replace a marriage, Eldon. I laughed. Actually laughed. You don't. I gestured at her. Because that's exactly what you tried to do, didn't you? You didn't even hesitate to pack a bag and leave me sitting here like a fool while you ran off to experience someone else. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no defense. She hadn't expected consequences. Lenora thought she had the power in this situation, that she could taste a different life, come back, and find me exactly where she left me. Hurt, but loyal. Waiting. She had underestimated me. The breaking point. Her breathing picked up. Her eyes burned into me, but she wasn't angry. No, not yet. She was afraid. Afraid that she had just destroyed something she couldn't get back. I thought we were strong enough to get through this, she whispered. I scoffed. You thought we were strong enough to get through your selfishness? That's rich. Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't move me. For years, I had been the devoted husband. The stable, reliable man who always put her first. I wasn't that man anymore. She took a slow, uncertain step toward me. Eldon, just tell me you're messing with me. Please. I exhaled, glancing past her at the street, at the car still idling at the curb. I'm not messing with you, Lenora, I said, my voice eerily calm. You made your choice. And now, I've made mine. The weight of my words sank into her like a stone. For the first time, she was the one who felt discarded. She turned sharply toward Odette. And you? What is this, some kind of game to you? Odette merely shrugged. Not a game. Just an opportunity. Lenora let out a strangled laugh, full of disbelief. You think you can just waltz in here and replace me? Odette smirked, her green eyes gleaming. Looks like I already did. Lenora looked between us, then at the house, her former home. Her fingers trembled around the suitcase handle, her breathing unsteady. Finally, she whispered, I didn't think you'd actually do this. I gave her one last look, steady, unwavering. That makes two of us. Then I closed the door in her face. The moment the door clicked shut, an eerie silence settled in the house. I exhaled, gripping the doorknob, my pulse still racing. I had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways, sometimes with shouting, sometimes with tears, sometimes with an explosive argument that ended with broken furniture and shattered memories. But in reality, it was simple. A door closed. A chapter ended. Odette's voice broke the silence. That was satisfying to watch. I turned around to see her standing with her arms crossed, an amused smirk on her lips. The dim lighting of the house cast shadows across her face, making her look even more mysterious. Was it? I muttered, walking past her toward the living room. I poured myself a drink, but my hand lingered over the glass for a moment before finally taking a sip. Odette sauntered over, plopping down on the couch with the confidence of someone who had always belonged there. She thought she had you wrapped around her finger, she mused. Thought she could just go explore and come home like nothing happened. I let out a slow breath. She did. That was the worst part. She actually believed I would wait, that I would sit here, miserable and heartbroken, while she had her little adventure. That wasn't love. That was entitlement. The messages start. Not even 5 minutes after shutting the door, my phone buzzed. Then again, and again. Lenora. I sighed, unlocking the screen. Lenora, Eldon, open the door. We need to talk. Lenora, please, just let me in. Lenora, I didn't mean for this to happen. You're blowing this out of proportion. I scoffed. Out of proportion? I showed Odette the messages. She smirked, shaking her head. Classic. She's realizing she's not as irreplaceable as she thought. I ignored the texts, but my phone kept buzzing. Lenora, are you seriously ignoring me? Lenora, I gave you space. Now you're just being petty. Lenora, answer me, damn it. There it is. The panic. The slow realization that the power dynamic had shifted. I set the phone down on the table and leaned back. She's not used to being ignored. Odette laughed softly. She'll get used to it. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Lenora wasn't the type to just walk away quietly. The late-night visit. An hour passed. Then 2. Just as I was starting to think she had finally given up, I heard it. A knock. Not a polite knock. A frantic, desperate one. I exchanged a glance with Odette, who raised an eyebrow. She really doesn't give up, does she? I walked to the door but didn't open it. Instead, I looked through the peephole. Lenora was standing there, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. But there was something else in her expression, something dangerous. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to win. Eldon, she called through the door, her voice surprisingly steady. You can ignore my texts all you want, but we both know this isn't over. I didn't respond. She exhaled sharply. You're not like this. You're not the kind of guy who just throws everything away. Funny. I could have said the same thing about her. I heard her shift on the porch. You're having your little tantrum, fine. But when you cool off, you'll see how ridiculous this is. I clenched my jaw. Tantrum? That was the moment I knew. She didn't regret what she had done. She only regretted losing control over me. Odette, who had silently walked up behind me, whispered in my ear, She's still trying to manipulate you. She was right. Lenora's voice softened. I'll come back tomorrow. You'll see reason by then. I finally spoke. Don't bother. A pause. Then, we'll see. She walked off into the night. I knew, without a doubt, this wasn't the last I'd hear from her. Lenora wasn't just going to let me go. No, this was just the beginning. The night after Lenora left was the first time in years that I truly felt free. No tension, no uncertainty, no feeling like I had to tiptoe around someone else's emotions. For once, I wasn't being treated like a backup plan. Odette stretched out on the couch beside me, lazily sipping wine. She's not done, she mused. You know that, right? I sighed, rubbing my temples. Oh, I know. Lenora wasn't the type to just let go. For years, she had been the center of everything. Her wants, her needs, her desires. She was used to having control over me, knowing I would always be there, always waiting. Now she was losing that grip. I knew she'd come back. I just didn't know when. The uninvited guest. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my doorbell ringing, again and again, like an alarm. I already knew who it was before I even checked. Lenora. I stood in the doorway, watching her through the peephole. She looked different, like she hadn't slept, like she had spent the night rehearsing what she was about to say. I didn't open the door right away. I made her wait. She rang again, then knocked, then let out a frustrated sigh before speaking through the door. Eldon, open the door. I crossed my arms. Why? A pause. Because we need to talk. We already did. She exhaled sharply. Eldon, stop this. You're acting like a child. I laughed at that. Me acting like a child? I finally opened the door, just enough to lean against the frame. Lenora's eyes flickered to the space behind me, scanning the house. She's still here, isn't she? I didn't answer. Her expression hardened. This is ridiculous. We can fix this. I tilted my head. Fix what, exactly? She crossed her arms, shifting her weight. Us. You know this isn't really over. You're just punishing me. I let out a slow breath. Tell me something, Lenora. When you packed your bag and left, did you feel guilty? Did you even hesitate? She faltered for just a second before regaining her composure. I told you. I thought we were strong enough to handle this. I shook my head, a humorless smile forming. No, you thought I was weak enough to accept it. That hit her. For the first time, she looked unsure. Good. She had spent the last few days assuming she had the upper hand, that she could waltz back in and put the pieces back together. Now she was realizing that I wasn't one of those pieces anymore. The last play. Her voice softened. Eldon, come on. You're throwing everything away over one mistake. I raised an eyebrow. A mistake? She swallowed. I shouldn't have left like that. I see that now. But you don't just destroy a marriage over one bad decision. I took a deep breath. You want to know the difference between you and me, Lenora? When I said, I do, I meant it. I never once thought about stepping outside of this marriage. Never once thought about exploring or experiencing something new. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. I leaned in slightly. And you? You didn't even hesitate. She clenched her jaw. You don't understand. No, I cut her off. I do understand. You thought I was safe. You thought you could do whatever you wanted, and I'd still be here. She shook her head. Eldon, please. We can talk about this, work through it. I'll make it up to you. I tilted my head, watching her carefully. How? She hesitated. I'll delete his number. I won't see him again. I'll do whatever you want. I nodded slowly. You'll do whatever I want? Yes. Her eyes lit up with hope, desperate now. Just tell me what you need, and I'll do it. I smiled. Then I stepped back and started closing the door. Her face twisted in panic. Eldon. I held up a hand. What I need, Lenora, is for you to walk away. For good. Her breathing hitched. This isn't a game, she whispered. I met her gaze one last time. No, it's not. That's why I already won. Then I shut the door. I heard her footsteps linger on the porch. Heard her shift, as if debating whether to knock again, whether to push just a little harder. But then, finally, after what felt like an eternity, she walked away. The last thread of control she had over me snapped, and I had never felt lighter. The moment Lenora's footsteps faded down the driveway, I exhaled, pressing my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I had expected her to fight harder, to scream, to cry, to try to claw her way back into my life with empty promises and manipulative words. But she hadn't. She had stood there, grasping for control that no longer existed, and then she left. Maybe she thought I'd change my mind in a day or two. Maybe she was hoping that once the anger wore off, I'd come crawling back. She had no idea that the old me, the man who would have done exactly that, was already gone. I turned back toward the house. Odette was still on the couch, watching me with an unreadable expression. She hadn't interrupted, hadn't offered any unnecessary commentary. Now, she finally spoke. "She'll be back." I scoffed, making my way to the kitchen. "She just walked away." Odette shook her head, crossing one leg over the other. "Yeah, but not for good. Not yet. She's not the type to lose quietly." I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but something deep in my gut told me she wasn't. Because Lenora hadn't left in defeat. She had left in denial. She still believed she had a way back in. I took a long sip of coffee, already bracing for whatever was coming next. The phone call. I didn't have to wait long. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed again. I didn't even have to check the screen. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. "Eldon," she breathed. Her voice was soft now, not demanding, not angry, just desperate. I stayed silent. She took a shaky breath. "I didn't go through with it." That made me pause. "What?" "I couldn't," she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "I left, I went to meet him, but when it came down to it, I couldn't go through with it." I frowned, gripping the phone tighter. "So you're telling me you almost cheated?" She let out a strangled laugh. "I thought I needed this. I thought it was something I had to do for myself, but when I got there, all I could think about was you." My jaw tightened. There it was. The last, desperate attempt to rewrite history. She was trying to turn this into something noble, as if she deserved a medal for stopping herself before crossing some invisible line. But what she didn't realize was that the betrayal hadn't started when she got to that hotel room. It had started the moment she decided I wasn't enough. I let the silence stretch, letting her squirm. Finally, she spoke again. "Eldon, I know I messed up," she whispered. "But don't you see? This proves something. I didn't actually do anything." I let out a slow, controlled breath. "You packed a bag. You walked out the door. You told me to accept it if I loved you. You made this choice, Lenora. Not me." "But I came back," she argued. I realized what I almost lost. I laughed bitterly. "No, you realized what you already did lose." A pause, then a quiet sniffle. She was crying now. If this had been a few days ago, I might have caved. I might have softened, let those tears chip away at my anger. But now I saw them for what they were. A last-ditch effort. A way to manipulate the situation just enough to convince me to save her from her own choices. I wasn't falling for it. She let out a shaky breath. "Please, Eldon, just come meet me somewhere. Let's talk. Face to face. I'll do anything." There it was. The final plea. I closed my eyes for a moment, considering my words carefully. Then I said them. "Lenora, you're not my problem anymore." Her breath hitched. "You don't mean that." "I do." Silence. Then, a quiet, broken, "I don't know what to do." I sighed. "That's not my problem either." Then I hung up. The last goodbye. I set the phone down, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not relief. Not triumph. Just peace. It was over. Truly, completely over. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more holding on to some illusion of who she used to be. I was free. Odette stretched lazily on the couch, glancing up at me. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Then I smiled. Like I just got my life back. And for the first time in a long, long time. That life was mine to live. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the anger, the manipulation, had finally lifted. Lenora was gone. And for the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in the exhausting cycle of trying to fix things that were never really mine to fix. I felt light. Free. Odette watched me carefully from the couch, her sharp green eyes studying my expression. "So," she asked, tilting her head, "what happens now?" I let out a slow breath, running a hand through my hair. "Now," I echoed, considering the question. "Now I start over." It was such a simple answer, but it carried a depth I hadn't fully processed until I said it out loud. For so long, my life had revolved around Lenora, her moods, her wants, her expectations. I had been the stable one, the reliable one, the man she assumed would always be there, no matter what she did. But now, I had a blank slate. Odette smirked. "And what does starting over look like?" I exhaled, leaning back in my chair. "It means figuring out what I want for a change." For once, I wasn't making choices based on someone else. I wasn't staying in a relationship out of obligation. I wasn't ignoring my own happiness just to maintain the illusion of stability. I was choosing me. The final goodbye. Later that evening, I got one last text from Lenora. Lenora, I'm sorry. I really am. But I see now that you're never going to forgive me. For a brief moment, I considered responding. Not because I felt sorry for her, because I didn't, but because I wanted to let her know that this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about respect. And the moment she walked out that door expecting me to wait for her, she lost that. I didn't reply. Instead, I deleted the message, blocked her number, and set my phone down with a finality that felt right. I was done looking backward. Looking forward. The next few weeks were an adjustment. I wasn't used to coming home to a house that felt peaceful. I wasn't used to making plans without having to check in with someone else. I wasn't used to putting my own happiness first. But little by little, I started to enjoy it. I went to new places, tried new things, met new people, not because I needed to fill a void, but because I wanted to. And Odette? She was still around. Not as some replacement for Lenora, not as some act of revenge, but as something new, something unexpected. She made me laugh, challenged me, reminded me that life wasn't meant to be lived in the shadow of someone else's choices. One evening, as we sat outside on my patio, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to me and smirked. You're different, she noted. I raised an eyebrow. Different how? Her eyes twinkled. You don't look like a man carrying the weight of someone else's mistakes anymore. I let that sink in. She was right. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for another betrayal. I wasn't holding on to bitterness or resentment. I wasn't trapped in the past. I was living. And as the last remnants of my old life faded into nothing more than a distant memory, I smiled. Because my future, had never looked brighter.